Alright YouTube, here's our first video for 2014. I meant to get an earlier start this year on making videos again. I know I haven't been making as many as I was. Sorry about that for the guys who like to see more stuff that's going on around here, but we're going to try to start making more videos. We're going to shut off the Power Stroke. I hadn't started it about 2 or 3 weeks, and yeah, it just needed some run time. We had some really cold weather. That polar vortex hit Louisville, Kentucky pretty hard. Not as hard as up north, I don't think, but we had some -5-degree temperatures around here. Ridiculously cold, and I hadn't started the truck through all that. Batteries held up good, which one of them is brand new. What we're doing today, we're working on some chainsaws. Now, for those of you who've been wanting to see Power Stroke videos, I keep saying I'm going to make one and then it never happens. I have been working on it some. Not going to get into describing everything I'm doing. As you can see, I'm just getting the skin ready for the bed so that we can prime it and have it ready to spray our bed liner in there. Getting all the dents out, which has been a lot of tedious work. You see that hump is completely covered with Bondo, but this is not what this video is about. We're doing some chainsaw maintenance. Got a little Poulan Pro here that was starting to act up on me. Got to where it didn't want to idle. Had a flat spot when you revved it up. This chainsaw is about, I don't know, 8 years old maybe. I can't remember exactly when I bought it. Maybe a little older. But like I said, it had a flat spot in the carburetor and got to where it didn't want to idle. And I took it apart, look at everything. First thing I was look at on these little 2-cycle engines are either the muffler getting clogged or this little in-tank fuel filter. Well, what I found when I looked in the tank was the fuel line had gotten hard and dry and just all broke off, and it only had like that much fuel line hanging into the tank, which means it would start sucking air at half full. And I replaced all that and it still didn't want to run right, and I had to do carburetor adjustment. I just put that filter back on. See, I took the filter off after I replaced them because it still wasn't running right, and I was wondering if it just wasn't sucking fuel through that filter. They're really kind of a restrictive filter, and I want to make sure this thing still runs here in a minute with that filter on, and it should. But I found out how to adjust these things. You can see that. See if this camera will focus. It don't want to focus that close. Yeah, I dropped this camera while I was in New York, and it takes a lot of focus ever since. Let's see, I think the one on the right, I got a fuel line covering that up. I also need to move that under there. There we go. Okay, I got my camera off there. Okay, we got that off of there. Now you got fuel lines. I wish I could take this apart and show you, I guess. Show you how my fuel lines go. Hang on, let me pause the camera. I'm going to take this cover off, and I'll show you real quick how the fuel lines go. Alright, now, after a few failed attempts at getting my camera positioned right to show you what I want to show you. Okay, I went ahead and removed the screws for this plastic cover right here, if you can see that. 2 nuts go through 2 studs that come out of the engine, right, just like that. Remove them nuts and this will lift off. It's going to be a little stubborn because all your linkage is still hooked up. I usually leave the throttle linkage hooked up unless I'm completely removing the carburetor. But to slide this carburetor off, you'll make it easier on yourself if you were to remove this little choke level. See this little blue thing right here? I don't know how much you can see until I watch the actual video, but just take some needle nose pliers and press that together. Pop your little choke lever loose. Sometimes it can be stubborn, you gotta be careful with it though. There you go. That's come out. I can just pull my choke out of the way and then work your carburetor off. It tends to be aggravating. Put this camera this way a little bit. camera's all tangled up with the sawhorses that I'm using for a table. Okay, we got that off. And I just wanted to show you how the fuel lines all go here. I'm going to leave the linkage hook up, but if you want to disconnect the linkage, all you do is that. Get that out of the way, and this will show all your fuel line routing. So I can go ahead and take the camera off the tripod and show you. Unfocus it here, or zoom it. Okay, basically it's pretty easy. You gotta order the fuel line kit with the small diameter. It's pretty much the same for the Poulan chainsaws and the weed eater. Actually, the fuel line kit I ordered was for a weed eater, but it's the same thing. Let's see if I got the box for it around here somewhere. I don't see it. They sent it to me in a little bag. Found it on eBay for like $7. This is my oil. I had to put a new oil pump kit on it too. I'll show you that too. Chain oiler. But anyway, found a fuel line kit for a Poulan 2-cycle engine. Poulan Pro. Poulan makes a Pro weed eater and a Pro chainsaw. But it's the same kit for the chainsaw and the weed eater, I guess, because the ad said for a weed eater, and I didn't notice it until after I ordered it, and I hoped it was right, and it was right. But anyway, got your small diameter fuel line and a large diameter. Large diameter goes to the primer bulb right here, and if you're facing the primer bulb, the right hand fitting goes to the fuel line that goes into the actual tank, and then you got another shorter, larger diameter fuel line that goes to this side of the carburetor. Remember, the carburetor sits in here like this. I don't want to put it in a bind here, but you know how it goes in there. It goes to that side of the carburetor, and yeah, it goes like that. Okay, it goes to this side of the carburetor, the side with the starter, and it goes to the left fitting of the primer bulb. And then your actual fuel feed line into the carburetor is this small diameter line, which goes to this fitting and down in that hole there. Now it's a very tight fit. Takes some patience to get in there, and it's a pressed tight fit because that's all it keeps it from leaking. It just presses the line in there. And I found a little trick to getting that line in there, because the hole is quite a bit smaller than the line. And what I do is cut my line on an angle. I don't know if I got an old piece of fuel line or not. What I can do is set the camera back on the tripod, and I'll take an old piece of fuel line and some scissors, and what I'm going to do is I just put it at an angle and cut it, and see how it's got that point, and that will help you get it in that hole. It'd have been better if I'd have made the video while I was doing it, but wasn't sure what was wrong with the saw, and I was just wanting to go ahead and get it fixed and then make a video after I figured it all out and know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that helps you slide it in those little holes if you cut your fuel line at an angle like it. Hopefully that little tip will help everybody. So I'm going to put this back together, and we're going to fire it up and make sure it still runs right with the fuel filter on it. Okay, we got the carburetor back together, and I was getting ready to tell you about the adjustment screws. I was watching my first clip that I made for this video, and I started to tell you, and then I kind of got off subject and started telling you about the fuel lines. But you got two adjustment screws. The one on the left is what they call the low. There's supposed to be an L stamped on the carburetor somewhere under it. I can't really see it myself. The one on the right is supposed to be high. I think I do see an H. It's very hard to see unless the carburetor's off. But the one on the left, the low, is actually opposite of what you think it would be. It's wide open throttle and throttle response. And the one on the right, the high, helps with the idling. And I got that off of another video on YouTube. Forgot the guy's name. Left him a comment thanking him because it really was helpful and took some guesswork out of adjusting this carburetor because I wasn't sure what screw did what. But just like he said, I adjusted the one on the left, and this thing would not. Only way this thing would run before I messed with the actual adjustment was if I poured gas down the carburetor, and it'd run. It'd start up wide open whether he was on throttle or not, and run until it ran out of fuel. It was like it wasn't getting any fuel, and made me think that I needed a carburetor kit or whatever. But actually, I took the carburetor car apart, cleaned the filter inlet screen underneath the top cover. It was full of dirt, but it didn't help. But all the gaskets were good on the carburetor. But anyway, when I adjusted the one on the left, I turned it to the left. There's a spline tool for this that I don't have. I think I'm going to order it. I would recommend ordering it, but you can use needle nose pliers, and you can grab a hold of it like this and just turn it. And I turned it to the left, I think about a half a turn, and it got to where it would fire and run wide open but would not idle. And I got that to where it sounded good while revving it up, and then I let it die, and I started playing with the one on the right, and it would try to idle for a little while and then die. Then I think I turned it to the left a little more, and I kept doing it until it would idle good. And we're going to see how it runs after we get it all back together. And I think, like I mentioned before, I didn't have a fuel filter on it because I thought that was causing my problem. And I did not run it. I made sure the tank was clean before I did that. Do not run it without a fuel filter, especially if you're using it for cutting, because you get a lot of dirt on these things. But that's the carburetor adjustment. Hopefully I will not have to fool with that. And also, okay, I was getting ready to put this on. Okay, I will have to pause the camera, and I want to show you something about the clutch, how to remove it and put it back on, and also the oil pump underneath. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to remove the clutch on these things an easy way. Also got that off of YouTube, so thank you to whoever that was. I need to remember the names of these channels I watch whenever I get a helpful tip, so I can thank them while I'm making my video for making stuff easier. Okay, we got this clutch here. It screws onto a threaded end of the crank, which is the actual crankshaft of the saw. First thing you need is a tool. You can buy this tool. It's a clutch remover tool for several different type of chainsaws. They're all pretty much universal, I think. I made one. I just took a nut, and I found my hole locations. I used my Bridgeport mill and spotted and drilled my holes, and I tapped them for a 1/4 thread, drilled some set screws in there, and then cut them off to where they would just fit right there on those half holes right there, and you can do that. Now always remember, this is a left-handed thread, which means you turn it to the right to loosen it. Okay, here's the trick I learned that was really handy, is how to hold this engine still. Now something heavier duty, bigger engine, you can always take a screwdriver and put it in the flywheel. But these things are so fragile, I wouldn't recommend doing that, to hold it still. And I found a neat little trick on YouTube that I liked. I tried it when I had this first initially took this off. And what you do is you bring your piston down to the bottom, just shine a light down in there in your spark plug hole, and turn your engine over. You'll see it go down. And the video I watched, the guy just stuffed a rope down in there. Get as much as you can. Make sure it is not some old rotted rope where you're going to get all kinds of dust, dirt, and debris from the rope coming apart. Make sure this is a fairly fresh nylon rope. That's the only thing I can think of to be careful of as you're doing this. Some people, actually the guy who made the video said that they do make a piston stop for it. He didn't like it because he heard that the piston could be damaged doing that, and I guess it could, because depending on how tight that clutch is, you might be putting a lot of pressure against that piston, pushing on that piston stop, which would be like a bolt that would screw into your spark plug hole. But I got that in there, and what I do is I just turn my nut. Remember, left-handed thread, we're turning it to the right to loosen it. Okay, let me go ahead and turn this until that rope gets bunched up in there and holds that piston still. And we've already broken it loose because I didn't have it super tight. But we'll leave that in there until, out of habit, I started going the wrong way, as you can see. We'll leave that in there until I go to put this on there and I'll tighten it. Anyway, there's your clutch right there. You got a spacer plate and your sprocket. See a spacer plate? I'm trying to do this one-handed. There you go, spacer plate, sprocket, and another little hardened washer that kind of protects your little plastic chain oiler pump. And there was something else I wanted to show you. There's the chain oiler pump right there. And it's pretty much easy, pretty much an easy operation to replace. You just take them 2 screws out, the whole thing comes out. I'll show you the old one real quick, if I can find it, as usual. Probably have to hunt it down. Oh, there it is. And there's everything. And right there is the old one. So you can see it goes like that. And here's where it goes bad on these. That little, see that little screw, or that little, not screw, but see that little plastic gear? Right there, there's a little flat spot on it. When you go to inspect them, don't just take one quick look and think, well, that gear looks good, because it does look good on that side. But if you turn it around, it's got like 1 or 2 teeth missing right there. So, and there's like a worm gear. It's a spring that comes with your kit. I didn't replace it because mine didn't need it. It is metal, so it's probably not going to ever go bad on you. I guess they do. They give you a new one when you buy a pump, but when you take the pump off, it just slides over top the crankshaft underneath this pump there. And that's pretty much all there is to it. And of course, you get this new whenever you buy a new pump. And you'll get you'll get 2 different lines here. I guess different chainsaws use the same pump, just have a little bit different of a line. Like I had another one came with this new one that looked like, this right there. That just came extra with the kit, probably for a different type of chainsaw. But that's all there is to that. I guess I can go ahead and put this back together. A little washer back on it. That and that. And remember to screw it to the left to tighten it because it is left-handed. Turn it until that piston comes back up and that rope stops it. And I think that's a pretty neat little trick using the rope. Because they're not really tight, but this will help you. I wouldn't really crank it. I guess you could tear something up if you really got too forceful with it. Remember, you are pushing that piston up against there. Okay. Now we just pull the rope out. Everything sounds okay. Make sure. I heard a little bit of a crunch. It was my actual nylon rope, though. Kind of worried me. But I think that's a good way to tighten it up without tearing too much up. Always remember to take that off. Push the plug back in. Get that on. Put the cover back on. I guess, in case you're wondering why the sudden interest in chainsaws when I've been restoring the Power Stroke and doing stuff with and stuff. Well, I already burnt up all my firewood. And I just all of a sudden took an interest in burning a lot more firewood than usual. I have a wood stove in the house, and if you feed it, it will heat the house, and the furnace won't hardly run at all. I have an electric furnace with heat pump, or a heat pump with electric furnace for backup, and the heat pump went out, so now I have nothing but electric furnace, and I just started burning all my wood up. And then it got super cold last week, like I said, -5, so I I'm gonna start cutting more firewood. We might do a little bit of a video on that too. Okay, there's that. I'm gonna go ahead and put the chain on it, the bar and the chain, and get this thing fired up. Get that down on there. And we'll get this thing all together and we'll do a startup on it and cut a few small pieces of wood, hopefully. Hang on. Alright, now we got it all together. I'm going to see how well this thing runs. I haven't tried to start it since I put everything back together. Like I said, I adjusted the carburetor where it was apart and got it running good. We'll see if everything stayed the same. I'm going to pump it a couple of times, pull the choke. It's trying to fire. I could use a little bit more adjustment on the idle, but better than it was. Bad. It was a little cold, but yeah, I think we got it. It was not sitting idle before, I know that much. And the fuel lines definitely needed to be replaced. It sure didn't hurt to put a new filter on it, but the biggest thing was it just needed a carb adjustment. And we got rid of the there's a little plastic cover. Let me pause the camera and I'll show it to you. Yeah, here's a little plastic cover that they have on it. I did not put it back on. That keeps you from adjusting the carburetor. Keeps it to the factory settings, which we all know after a certain time the factory settings are set for emissions, which means they're usually running way too lean. So get rid of that thing, throw it away, burn it, whatever. That's what I think about all the emission laws. All it does is keep your equipment from running right. But anyway, looks like this thing's running good. I'm happy the way it responds. No more bogging or flat spots in the carburetor when you rev it up, and I didn't even rebuild the carburetor on an 8-year-old as I saw. A lot of people would have trouble with these little 2-cycle engines and throw them away. Actually, I have done it in the past. Just have to get so aggravated with it, I just throw it away or throw it up in the loft. I got a couple of weed eaters up in the garage loft. I probably need to get out and get going again just so I can have spares. But you got 1 or 2 old ones laying around, you can keep them running right. You don't have to go running up to Home Depot or Lowe's and spend another couple $100 on a new saw, weed eater, or some other 2-cycle powered piece of... And Angel's trying to knock the camera over. Another 2-cycle powered piece of equipment. Learn to work on them and you can fix them for fairly cheap. I spent almost $20 getting this saw, and it actually runs better than new. And there's Angel right there. Anyway, thanks for watching. I got a little McCulloch saw I'm going to try to put together. I'm going to do a video on it. I'll tell you a story on it. I want to get everything out and I make sure I have everything for it. I may get it together today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing and hang in there. We are going to get back to work on the 94 Power Stroke.